Hello, Lorinda. It's good to be here. And this is our little meeting to demonstrate one technique from the Canadian therapy modality called observed and experiential integration. We call it OEI for short, and it is an eye-based therapeutic process that is also really good for self-care. And so I use it and I teach it. I use it personally, but I also teach it to a lot of the creative clients that I work with. So some of those are writers, some of those are entrepreneurs, some of those are painters or dancers. And OEI, this particular technique that I'll show you, that I'll demonstrate, we can do it together, is really effective for calming anxiety, calming what we often call triggers, which we think of as intensities, however they come up, calming kind of compulsive or procrastinatory behaviors, and also exploring those behaviors. So I invite you to think about think about a behavior or even a tendency of mind that you have when it comes to your own creative work or the material that you're writing about. So you can imagine how this could be amplified. We could explore anything that someone is creating or doing in the creative process. So it can be either or for our demonstration today.
Sounds good. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, so what's something that is kind of complicated for you or difficult?
Okay. Say it out loud or just think about it.
If you're comfortable sharing it,
Sure.
it'd be good to know in a way
hmm
because you vocalizing it stirs up your nervous system a little bit more and
hmm
makes the material a little bit more present for us to work with.
hmm Well, I've been doing a lot of work myself around the tendency to procrastinate, particularly when it comes to writing or big projects.
Okay. So think about the last time you knew you had some time to work on that particular project or move forward, and instead you found yourself doing the dishes or stuck on your phone or strangely polishing the boots that you almost never wear. Like whatever it is. Remember that time. And as soon as we go inward, that's the nature of our eye brain body connection. As soon as we start to see those memories in our mind, we will often experience some of the thoughts or feelings or physical sensations associated with what we're seeing in our imagination, in our memory.
Mhm.
So this is when we begin our OEI process. I'm going to invite you to cover one eye or the other.
Leave my
And
glasses on?
you can, yeah, whichever you're more comfortable with. Ideally, we want to occlude as much light from the eye as possible, and you're going to keep your eye open under your hand.
Okay.
Okay?
hmm
And notice that the feelings or sensations associated with that tendency to procrastinate.
Okay.
Yeah, just notice also where they arise in your body.
hmm Shall I say it or just think on these things?
You can tell us
Okay.
where you feel it physically.
Okay. So the sensation I'd say is like a weight, like I think it's like shame, right? Like the weight of like, oh, I should be doing this. Uh, and it's definitely the place I most notice it is like a constriction in my like throat and chest.
hmm hmm Okay, so allow yourself to have the space to feel that, and then switch eyes. Once again, occluding as much light as you can from your eye and keeping your eye open so that it continues to be active. The neurons in the optic nerve continue to fire. And notice if it's the same feeling or different on this side.
It's the same feeling for me, but it feels more lower down in the body, less kind of heady.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, just notice how it is a little bit lower down, and notice how, as you sit on this side, as you rest with the feeling on this side, it may begin to shift. If it's lower down, it might begin to continue to kind of sink downwards. Just notice how that feels.
Yeah, it does seem like it kind of sinks into my belly more.
Mhm. Okay. So that alone, feeling that it starts to shift, that it's changing places, is good instruction for you that the feeling itself can move around and it can change. So I'm going to invite you to switch eyes again. Is it the same or different on this side?
Again, a little higher on this side.
Okay, so it moves around. And
Hmm.
what is the emotion associated with this feeling of procrastination over here?
Hmm. Well, as I mentioned, mostly a sense of like shame, like,
Hmm.
oh, I should be doing that.
Hmm.
But this like weight of the shame is kind of keeping me glued. Like as much as it's like, oh, I should go and do that, the more shame that there is, the heavier I feel weighted down where I am.
Okay, so switch eyes again. Notice if it's the same or different.
And still just like picturing that memory, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Is it the same or different on this side?
Again, more kind of lower down in my belly. The feeling's also a little lighter, less weight, a little more butterflies.
Hmm. Okay. And and I'm going to invite you to imagine doing what you need to do
Mhm.
in order to stop the procrastination.
Okay.
Just use the power of your imagination to see yourself ending the procrastinatory habit or behavior in this particular moment.
As soon as you invited me to do that and I started to picture it, I really felt that tension, the resistance like rise up.
Uh-huh. 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 Okay, good. This is fun. It came up. Yeah, can you
Hmm.
believe how strong that feeling is when somebody tells you to do something?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like it was as I pictured myself, say, you know, laying on the couch, scrolling on my phone, uh, as I pictured myself like putting it down and, you know, getting up and going to my computer, definitely the resistance was just like, no, no, that's really hard, you
Right.
know.
It's too hard to do. It's too hard to do. Is it are you rebelling?
Well, I have to admit, I've been doing a lot of work around this. I have a I've been doing a lot of somatic work around this and EMDR. So I actually have a very strong sense of what's going on. So if I allow myself, I can very much tap into that now. And because I've been overcoming it, I could tap into the part of me that allows me to overcome it. So for the
Oh,
purposes of the exercise, shall I stay with it or shall I follow it in the ways that have been becoming more cognitive to me, you know?
interesting. I think you should do whatever makes sense for you in terms
Okay.
of touching into facing that
Hmm.
resistance and also doing what you do when you experience EMDR or other somatic
hmm
interventions, bring that in.
Okay.
If you have resources, use those
hmm
resources. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is a this is the type of exercise I would do, right? From those practices.
Hmm.
So so shall I tell you or just do it?
You can tell
I'll
me.
tell you.
Yeah,
Okay.
tell me.
So when I feel that resistance come up, and I'm keeping my eye covered, right?
Yeah, keep your eye covered. Actually, because this is
I,
getting very cognitive, you can lower
okay,
your hand. And also, I don't
okay,
want your arm to get tired.
that's okay. It's interesting. As soon as I lower my hand, uh, I that the somatic sensations dissipated. It's
Yeah.
really interesting. But
It's what happens because covering one
yeah,
eye versus covering the other
yeah,
stimulates different brain areas
uh-huh,
that stir up and awaken
uh-huh,
different nerves into different
yes,
parts of the body. So when we
yeah,
lower the hand, sometimes an insight comes in when we lower the hand.
mm-hmm,
And it's interesting that what you experienced was just a cessation of those somatic responses, which is great. It's all
yeah.
good.
There's a
So tell me.
sensation and a disconnection, right? Like I was very connected with my body, and then as soon as I
Mm,
released, I was like, oh, okay, now I really am back in the cognitive.
right.
But I know that from the somatics, what I would do is I would allow myself to notice that resistance coming up and acknowledge it and be with that for a little bit, and then shift my awareness to a part of my body that is less activated or more neutral in some way.
Hmm.
And then I would allow myself to feel into that. And from there, from that place, that's where I can do the action from the more neutral place. And then
Hmm.
I can go back and forth with it. So that like pendulation technique that I've been taught
Hmm.
in another context, which all this started with your Courageous Writers Academy, actually. Like is kind of what,
I'm glad to hear
yeah.
that. It's all
So,
connected, right? It's all working, like this kind of work, it's all working with brain and body and the connections between. And suggestion too. Like in some ways we're
hmm
moving back and forth to find the place where there is less resistance
hmm
or not even less resistance, but a
hmm
possibility of integrating the resistance.
yes.
So OEI integrates
hmm
especially because it's a trauma therapy. The goal is not to shift away, the goal is to shift in and
hmm
then to integrate the sensation.
mm
However, if you've been working in other modalities that have been successful you can use, you can also bring that into the practice.
hmm
So we can do that. So just now you said that you can shift into a part of your body that's less activated
hmm
and allows you to continue the visualization to see what, what it would be like to just,
hmm
start your work and keep doing your work. And
hmm
so that's great. That's wonderful. That's a resource. So of course we
hmm
would want to use that.
hmm
So can you feel how good it feels to connect with that resource, that thing that you've already done, you've already learned how to do?
Yes, and it is new. It's very new for me.
Uh-huh.
So I'm still learning to trust it
Yeah,
and to,
that makes complete sense, right?
yeah.
Like, I mean, this is really turning into a bona fide therapeutic session because we're adding more, right? And that's the beauty of the work is that it gets quite deep. And that's okay. We'll kind of hold it there, bringing in your sense of the resistance, also a little bit of distrust,
hmm
natural that you would feel that even working with me. We haven't worked together. We haven't been in a room like this together for a long time.
hmm
So we can hold that in the space and then we can integrate it so
hmm
that even as you continue your work with your EMDR or somatics person, that feeling of integration will also serve that work.
hmm
Okay.
I'd like that.
So now that we've talked about it, and that we say that talking about it and using words is cognitive, but as you know, we're sitting here together. We're kind of building up our connection again. You're hearing my voice. I'm hearing your voice. Um, there's a limbic resonance that's happening, not just between us as writers or people who are on a panel together, but also as creators and, comrades in this room together.
Yes.
So there's already like more trust, more sense of connection. Um,
Yes.
even for me, like I feel more calm, even though I know we're recording. So I feel a little steadier in my body too. So now let's go back to where we were before, and I'm going to invite you to once again cover one eye or the other and notice how you feel about, you know, the hope to change your habit of procrastinating.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel now that we've got a little bit more connected and
Mm-hmm.
you've also brought in these other resources that you've been working on quite
Mm-hmm.
consciously?
Well, I feel very, as you mentioned about the space that we're holding, I can feel your kind of a sturdiness from you, like a calmness. So it feels like very safe for me to explore this in this space.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think that I'm judging you?
No, no, not at all. I feel very held.
Okay, so switch eyes.
Mhm.
On this side, does it feel a bit different? Do you think I might be judging you?
It's funny because until you asked the question, it hadn't even crossed my mind. And then when you asked it and I switched eyes, there was that part of me that was like, maybe she is, like, what if someone is?
Yeah,
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 what will people think even watching
yeah,
this, right?
yeah. Well, often there is often we have unconsciously a certain reaction to people's faces, strangers' faces, faces that we know, even our partner's faces at times. If their expression changes in an unexpected way, it can strike some place in us that does cause a reaction. So I thought I would just ask
Mm-hmm.
to also check into that piece of, resistance or rebellion.
Yeah.
How does it feel when I say that your procrastination, or actually when I ask the question, do
Mm-hmm.
you think your procrastination is related to rebellion?
Well, I've talked about this recently with my therapist, and in the work I've been doing, what I feel now is it's recently become conscious to me through these sensations that it's more about for me the rebellion doesn't land anywhere in my body. It doesn't resonate with anything. But what I notice is like the fear of being with myself and
Hmm.
being like just being tuned into myself. That's the discomfort. And it's much more comfortable to be tuned into the world around me. Is like as much as that's like preventing me from going to the thing that fulfills me, it's
Mhm.
more familiar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to go to yourself with ease and a sense of comfort?
Yes, and I really like that suggestion. It almost makes me want to cry. Like it's just like, yes, it would be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So allow yourself to feel the genuine emotion of, wouldn't it be nice? It would be so nice. Remember a time where you turned to yourself creatively or just having fun with that sense of ease and comfort.
Hmm.
Yeah, remember. I mean, as children, most of us had lots of those times.
Yes.
Even if we grew up in pretty adverse conditions, children still found ways to play, man. They needed to do it. And so we can often have, even with pretty severe tr histories of trauma, we can find really create a lot of creative freedom in our early years sometimes. So just notice that.
Yeah, there's a memory that is surfacing as you talk about this that I've been connecting with when I think of that as a child, like sitting at the
Mhm.
kitchen table, like the afternoon sun coming in, like drawing pictures, or just that sense of like being in my own inner world and comfortable there.
Yeah, yeah. And as you think about that, remember that, where do you feel that in your body?
Those feelings where the tightness was, particularly my belly, become spacious, calm,
Mm.
like just calm waters, and like
Hmm.
open air.
Hmm. Wonderful. And can you continue to feel that?
Yes, and maybe a little. That's where like the oh, I need to protect this. Like oh, like wants to kind of cover it up a bit.
Yeah. 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 You can cover it up. You can hide. It's okay. You're in your own mind. You can be
Hmm.
protective of it. Hmm. Okay. So I'm going to invite you. This was the second technique that I'd mentioned before we started running the video,
Hmm.
but I'm going to invite you to do a little peekaboo. So this is you mentioned pendulation. So this is
Hmm.
titration. You're just sharing a little bit of that sense of permission and the warm kitchen table and the sunlight and even the self-protectiveness. Like I'm here doing my creative miracles, and I'm also, hiding a little bit. I'm protected at the kitchen table.
Hmm.
So you're allowing the brain structures that are connected to your other eye to actually feel some of that magic,
Hmm.
some of those sensations, feelings. I don't know what's going on in your brain, all kinds of things. Okay?
Yeah, it does. It feels soothing.
Yeah?
Also, my arm's getting tired. Should I
I
let her
know.
rest
I
a
was
second?
just gonna say, switch eyes. I know it's a hard workout, this one.
It
And
is.
notice if it's the same or different on this side.
This one's a little more my adult self, but calmer now.
Hmm. Yeah, it is
Hmm.
calmer now.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, you appear calmer. Your face looks more relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel again that the calm waters and the open air, but the adult self is more capable. Like, okay, we can just be here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel that confidence that, slowly you're figuring this out? You're getting really good support. You're facing this particular tendency and you're bringing your courage to it as well. Even just by doing this with me, it's very courageous.
Thank you. I feel relief. Like that
Mm,
tension feels like relief. It's still a little tense from emotion, like in the throat. I mean, it's like almost like I say, like a sense of almost like, oh, I could cry with the relief, as
yeah,
opposed to, yeah, yeah, as opposed to the holding of the tension, like a letting the tension come out.
right, right. Yeah, so a real change, like a real
Hmm.
shift in what the experience of that, some of that tightness is. It's the valence has changed a little bit. So to finish, I'm going to ask you to switch eyes again
Okay.
and notice if it's the same or different.
Maybe that's the integration you were talking about.
Yeah,
Feels a little more like the child self, the past memory, and the adult part, like the calmness and the even the anxiety. It feels a little more like all together again.
yeah. And so switch eyes again and notice how it's all coming together again. And potentially how there's a sense of that sinking that you initially felt quite a few minutes ago now, that kind
Mhm.
of sinking of the physical symptoms. It might, you might be experiencing it and you might not, but often we start to feel physically more grounded.
Mhm.
And then switch eyes again. And at your own pace, just slowly move back and forth, noticing that physical sensation of integration. It might not be exactly the same on each side, but the likelihood, having moved through this process now, the likelihood is that each side will be more balanced and will feel more
Mhm.
similar.
It does feel more balanced.
Yeah,
Interestingly, this side does, I notice the tension a little more here,
yeah.
which I guess makes sense if it's more like it's definitely better, but here it feels much more like I'm just free there, like there's a freedom in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you get a breath release often each time. So an inhalation, exhalation that just happens on its own. It's nervous system. We get those a lot in yoga. Certain moves will actually make us unconsciously take an in-breath and an exhalation follows. Do you still feel that kind of tightness in your throat on the other side?
It's definitely like dissipating now. Like again, I think more of that integrated feeling, that feeling of wholeness and peace more now, kind of like with both sides. Uh, it's interesting with this side that it's consistently been more, I'm more aware of the sensations more in my face or like in my head, and this one is definitely more the lower body, like below the neck.
Yeah. 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 Well, we have usually pretty distinct differences. And for most of us, particularly if we have a history of adverse childhood experiences or trauma, for probably 70 to 80 of us, the right side tends to be a bit more reactive. So a little bit more activated when we are activated.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. You mean when the right eye is uncovered, right?
When the right eye is uncovered, yeah, the right eye is the more activated
Mhm.
eye.
Mhm.
For some
Mhm.
people, but
Mhm.
then sometimes it really does shift. It moves back and forth, both sensation and emotion and affect kind of changes as we
Mhm.
change sides and integrate the material, and
Mhm.
cognitively too, different thoughts and clarities come into the mind. Yeah, so what,
Yeah, it
what
is
is
kind
it
of
like?
dissipating.
Yeah, sorry, what is it like to be with yourself
Now,
now?
uh, much calmer, much more, I want to say comfortable, tolerable, like, okay, this isn't a self I need to move away from. I feel clarity of mind and body.
Hmm. Hmm. And so you can lower your hand,
Hmm.
and as you take a few breaths, just to finish, when you take a breath in and you exhale, allow that exhalation to consciously flow down your body. And you can go out, you can send it out one leg and then inhale and send it out the other leg as well. Just so that, and really feel into your feet, just so that we can finish with a sense of, here's the top, there's the bottom. So there's some physical sense of being grounded, whether it's like just feeling your bum and your hips in your chair or actually feeling your feet on the floor. There's a sense of this is the whole courage room, right? This is the whole package.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It feels really good. Yeah, it feels like yeah, that connection and integration feel. I could feel it go from my upper body to like, yeah, my hips or my seat and my legs and my feet now. Yeah, and like you say, almost like water flowing kind of. Hmm.
Yeah. So we'll often have those kind of images towards the end of this integration exercise. And that's how I like to think of just the basic eye switching as an integration exercise. And so, yeah, that's an example of how OEI works. And it was quite interesting for me to bring in those other resources that you have that you're exploring and using because we use what we have, right? I mean,
Hmm.
especially as creative people, and like there doesn't have to be um, a clash of practices. That's what we're doing. We're integrating. So how to fold
Yeah.
it in? Where are some touch points that make sense to bring in the healthy practices that we already have? Like lots of people do yoga or meditation or some kind of mindfulness practice. And it's very easy to find ways, personal ways, to bring those into an experience like this. Like I'm a big meditator, and
Mhm.
OEI is an amazing way to calm the nervous system so that I can start meditating or I do a lot
Mm.
of self-hypnosis now too. So if my brain is really active, one thing I do is I just cover my right eye and I experience almost an immediate down regulation of the nervous system. And everybody is different, so people will have different reactions, different experiences using this modality. Hmm.
Yeah, no, it all feels very, very related to me, like all the different components of the work with OEI and the other things I've experienced. May I ask a question?
Hmm.
So, is this a technique, this OEI technique that you would recommend doing? So, for instance, like if I'm noticing myself procrastinating, I would do it then, or is
A
it
hundred
something to
percent.
do on its
Absolutely.
own? Okay.
Absolutely. It is for in situ situations.
Hmm.
Like when your stuff is happening, that's exactly when you use it. Or when you're triggered in some other way
Hmm.
too, you use this practice. I mean, I use it myself on a regular basis. And for me, it's often I cover my right eye.
Hmm.
But then the switching can simply be a way of calming down. And sometimes it's unconscious. We're working with the brain, so we don't even have to know what the steps are exactly. We can just cover. As soon as you feel a sliver of more calm, you
Hmm.
can spend a bit of time with that nice calm little sensation. And, one way we can work with it is we can expand it. We can
Hmm.
see ourselves feeling that calmness grow. And then switch eyes. You remember we did some of this, but you
Hmm.
can also just remember the calmness from the other side. And you can often titrate,
Hmm.
bring it over, and then switch and switch. Yeah, I just got a breath release myself and inhalation,
Even
exhalation.
watching you, I was like, oh, that's very soothing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, it's I do believe that it's also connected to our body's tendency to self-calm and self-soothe with bilateral stimulation. So many of the things that we do physically are bilateral stimulation. We're stimulating and calming the brain when we go for a walk, when we go for a bike ride, when we go swimming, when we dance. So anything that moves this side of the body and then rhythmically moves the other side and rhythmically moves the other side, that's a that's a very calming experience for the body. So
so I would
we,
do, so I would try doing these like when I notice that that's happening, and then as I'm going through the process, like check in and be like, okay, can I go to the desk or to the thing that I'm avoiding now? Is that right?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
Or maybe even when I sit down at the desk, if I feel that like, oh, let me get up and go do the dishes or whatever, right? Like,
yeah. It's
yeah.
just like, whoa,
Hmm.
calm down. You can stay
Hmm.
here. You can be with yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, very nice. I
yeah.
like that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yeah,
Will I stop recording now?
I think so. I think we're
Uh,
done.